This is my head comfortably within the jaws of our strangest cousin, Gigantopithecus. As you can tell from the name and the fact that they could comfortably chew my head off, they were a giant ape. Biggest paleontologists have ever found. If the 2016 Jungle Book movie is anything to go by, they were the size of an ancient temple, practically. But more realistically, they were maybe a third as big, or perhaps twice the size of a modern gorilla, which is still a terrifying thought, to be honest. As far as we're aware, though, they're one of the few non-human apes to go extinct in the past 3 million years. And yeah, I've fallen down a Gigantopithecus rabbit hole in a big way. I've fallen down a giant ape's hole, you could say. Or maybe don't say, ever. So what do we actually know about this giant? Why are they extinct? And did our ancient ancestors ever come face to face with this mysterious beast? Let's get into it. Okay, I actually have to talk about dragons first, but I promise it's related. This is a painting from the 13th century of a Chinese dragon. Dragons in Chinese mythology represent prosperity and good fortune. They're a little bit more chill than European counterparts. But these, stories of dragons weren't just stories to ancient Chinese people. Dragon bones, called longu, featured prominently in traditional Chinese medicine. Apparently they also stop anal prolapse and sleeping with demons in your dreams. So, an important medicine. However, obviously dragons don't exist. So what was it that people were being given when they were being given a dragon bone? Fossils. Lots and lots of fossils. And it's basically thanks to this need for fossils for medicine that we know about Gigantopithecus. By the early 19th and 20th century, China was full of fossil hunters searching for dragon's bones, and it's in a traditional medicine shop in Hong Kong in 1935 that Ralph von Koenigswald found this enormous molar. Koenigswald was a famous paleontologist of the time, still now famous. 2 years after this trip to Hong Kong, he found some very famous Homo erectus fossils in Java. Koenigswald thought the dragon's teeth he had found might have been related to an extinct ape called Gigantopithecus, but there was a genuine debate at the time as to whether these were an early form of man. I mean, still today, people think of Gigantopithecus as Bigfoot. Research into Giganto was paused for a little bit because of World War II. Koenigswald was imprisoned by the Japanese, I believe. But fortunately, he buried the bones that he had gathered in a mate's back garden. They survived the war. Research continues. Since the discovery of Gigantopithecus, we found thousands more specimens of them, of course. But here's the mysterious thing, interesting thing. We're basically entirely missing Gigantopithecus. Even though we have thousands of remains, we know almost nothing about them. We only have very, very specific remains, very, very specific dragon's bones. Guys, are you consuming ancient fossils to get your daily nutritional support? If so, may I suggest a better alternative, AG1. AG1 Next Gen is a daily health drink clinically shown to support gut health and fill in common nutritional gaps. It's a great way to start your day. Honestly, spring is here, birds are chirping. Why not start your day with a new routine you can stick to? With over 75 ingredients, including 5 probiotic strains, it makes things easy. Since it replaces the need for probiotic, multivitamin, is now just 1 scoop. I take it at work when I get to the office, and I do feel like it helps me stay a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more calm. It's great. It tastes great too. And on top of that, I'm increasing my vitamins, my minerals, my antioxidants, all good stuff. It's a lot better than grinding up fossils. Don't do that. Go to drinkag1.com/Stefan Milo or scan the QR code. You'll get an AG1 flavor sampler and a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 free in your welcome kit with your first AG1 subscription. That's $72 of value. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. We know for sure that Gigantopithecus lived about 2.2 million and maybe 200,000 years ago, or at least those are the dates we have with the fossils we've found, always subject to change, of course. Obviously, that's a really long time ago, and it's genuinely difficult to find ancient fossils But when it comes to Gigantopithecus, we only have teeth and jaw bones. Just teeth and jaw bones, that's it. About 2,000 teeth and 4 mandibles, to be precise, roughly. So stupid. As far as I'm aware, though, literally nothing else. Literally nothing else at all. No leg bones, no crania, not even a humble coccyx. Nothing. Most modern estimates put them at maybe 2.3 to 3 meters tall, maybe 200 to 300 kilograms, sort of overlapping with the upper limit of modern gorillas. As you can see, those estimates vary quite a lot, and that's just because it's so hard to estimate the size of an animal from just its teeth and its jaws. It could have incredibly robust jaws, but the rest of its body is, slightly larger than expected. I mean, they were for sure huge, though. They were for sure huge. This is a picture of 2 Giganto jaw bones compared to a gorilla's. Obviously, huge difference. Big difference. Absolute beasts, bruv. Greatest primates of all time. The Gigantopithecus fossils we all have come from caves. Some of these quite small, way up in the mountains, almost certainly not home to Gigantopithecus. So how did all these bones end up there? I'll let you take a guess. If you said because porcupines were chewing on them, you'd be correct. Isn't that such a funny thing to say? The Giganto fossils we have are found along the side the nibbled remains of other animals like stegodon. And yeah, these porcupines are chewing on them for calcium, basically. It's pretty crazy. The only reason we know this ape exists is that porcupines were sort of ditching these remains in caves after they'd nibbled everything they wanted. And 200,000 years later, people thought they were dragon remains. That's just a funny twist and turning of events. No DNA from Gigantopithecus has ever been successfully recovered, which is a shame, which is a bummer. We could learn a huge amount from that, but it's just so hard getting DNA from tropical climates. That's basically all there is to it. Fortunately, proteins survive much better than DNA. I made a whole video on that cutting edge science with the people actually behind it. So do go check that out. According to the proteins recovered from Giganto, they're a member of the same family as orangutans. They last shared a common ancestor maybe 10 to 12 million years ago, so they did diverge a long time ago. This is where you often see illustrations, including in this video, of them being orange, but we don't know that. We don't know that at all. I mean, they diverged from orangutans slightly longer than we diverged from gorillas. And, most of us don't look like gorillas. Okay, I know I made that silly joke there about most of us not looking like a gorilla, but I do have to make a super sincere point here. Look at this face of this gorilla. Look at the face. It's so easy to see ourselves in them, isn't it? We can see some understanding in there. We can see ourselves in their eyes. Chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans. I get that sensation with all of them. And it's just absolutely fascinating, mind-blowing to imagine an ape the size of Gigantopithecus and feeling that same way. Looking into their eyes and empathizing, sympathizing, whatever the word is, with them. Incredible, man. Incredible. Okay. Bye. They diverged from our last common ancestor maybe 14 to 18 million years ago, way back in the Miocene when the world was just full of apes, truly planet of the apes. But, in the 14 million years that's transpired since then, did they ever come across any of our ancient ancestors? So I've mapped out all the Gigantopithecus sites that I could find. Took me absolutely forever. Took me an entire afternoon. No big deal. Whatever. Not annoyed at all that none of these sites appear on Google Earth, or that Google Earth in China is absolutely terrible. It's no big deal. You can see we have 2 further north in China, but mainly there's this huge spread down here, down in southern China. Also a site in Vietnam, potentially, and also another site in Phabong. Where was that? Thailand. And also another site in Thailand, Phabong. There's a debate as to whether the fossils in these last 2 are Gigantopithecus or another prehistoric ape. So that's why they're blue. But it's not crazy. That's basically all in the same, region. The other Gigantopithecus sites were found. So Even if we don't have fossils there, I'm sure it's quite likely they're roaming around in that environment. Does this overlap with early human sites though? Well, that's tricky to answer. The big early human sites in China, they seem to be concentrated way further north. One that gets kind of close down here, Yuan Mao. So it doesn't really look like these early human sites overlap with the Gigantopithecus range. That could just be a bias in the archaeological record, of course. Could just be a bias. But the other hypothesis is that these early humans preferred living more on open plains. There's lots of big animals for them to hunt, like horses and things like that. There's just big herds of animals on the plains, and tropical environments, even though you would think they're so lush, so vibrant, so full of life, I think it's quite hard for humans to live in them. I think it's quite a harsh environment. The only site where there's potentially human remains, ancient human remains, and Giganto remains is that one in Vietnam, Tam Cac. But, you know, they might not be Giganto remains. So, yeah, it doesn't look like they overlap. But I think that's not the end of the story, though. I think that's not the end of the story, because when we're looking at these early Chinese sites, we're talking about hominins like this. This is Yunxian 1 and Yunxian 2. They're looking a bit crashed and smushed. They're looking a bit worse for wear, but to be fair, they are 1.77 million years old. They're not looking too bad considering that. Obviously, they weren't modern humans like us. That far back in time, this morphology, they're Homo erectus. For sure, we descend from a hominin like this in some way, but they're definitely not modern humans. Although, I would think of them as human. Personally, I would think of them as human. Humans of some form have lived in China for probably 2 million years. And even if the tropical forests were not the preferred environment of Homo erectus in China, in 2 million years, could they have bumped into each other? I don't think that's unlikely. I don't think that's unlikely. Especially as we know Homo erectus made it as far south as Indonesia. You know, they're moving about a bit. They're a curious human. They could have bumped into Giganto. But I think as we move closer to that extinction window of Gigantopithecus, it gets even more complicated. By 200,000 years ago, different humans were living across China, okay? A lot more modern. Denisovans, Homo longi, whatever you want to call them. We have the jawbone off the coast of Taiwan, Denisovan teeth in Laos, and even one just north of Hong Kong, a specimen called Mabaman, which, I mean, it could literally be a Neanderthal. Neanderthals could have been in this environment too. That's not out of the question. It's reasonable to assume, based on genetics, that Denisovans were also across island Southeast Asia, in, again, Indonesia, Malaysia, places like this. Warm, tropical environments. These humans, you know, 1.5 million years after Homo erectus, were a lot more adaptable, a lot more capable, and seemingly distributed widely across Asia. Dating these Denisovan fossils is tough. Some of them, you know, are after the extinction of Gigantopithecus. Others are just more loosely dated to the middle to late Pleistocene. But if Mabaman, how far away is this? If Mabaman was just 500 kilometers away from the known Gigantopithecus range, I find it hard to believe that our ancestors did not bump into them. I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't be aware of their giant apes living in the forest next to them. Me personally. Do we have any sites where they overlap? No, but do we need that? I'm not sure. One thing we don't have evidence for, though, obviously with how few Gigantopithecus remains we have, is us hunting them, us killing them, us being responsible for their extinction, which is a relief, because probably humans are responsible for the extinction of a lot of megafauna. Our bad planet Earth. But if it wasn't us, then why did Gigantopithecus die out? So this is the latest paper to attempt to answer this question, the demise of the giant ape Gigantopithecus blacki. The authors of this paper were able to get 157 dates from 22 known Giganto cave sites, all those caves across southern China that we saw earlier that I tried to map out. That's where all these dates came from. This allowed them to get a timeline of Giganto's decline, and obviously you can see what's going on around then. For the 1.5 million years before their extinction, Giganto lived in warm, tropical, forested environments. This is important because their diet was likely very rich in fruits and you know, Fibrous plants, probably in a similar way to gorillas, but for sure a lot of fruits. We can get a sense from that just from the shape and morphology of their teeth, but also the isotopes within them. We can get an idea of their diet. And yeah, no doubt this forest provided plenty of fruits in the same way it does for modern apes like orangutans. Based on the pollen records from these caves, and also things like tiny microscopic pieces of charcoal, starting around 1.1 million years ago, but increasing significantly around 200,000 years ago, right around the time they went extinct, there seems to be a lot more climatic variability. And this resulted in an open landscape. This forest that they were living in, it shrank and declined. In all likelihood, this huge beast, Giganto, relatively top of the food chain, needed a lot of calories to eat, just couldn't find enough food in this new environment. And they spent their last days roaming the grasslands, trying to find enough fruit to eat. Just for comparison, I tried to find out how many calories a gorilla needs to eat in a day. Turns out that's quite tricky. Seems there's quite a big amount of variation, but a silverback might eat between 5,000 and 9,000 calories a day. And so, if Gigantopithecus was a third as big, twice as big, what's that? 13,000 calories a day, perhaps? 15,000 calories a day, perhaps? From fruits and leaves and branches? That's a lot. They were hungry for sure. Maybe even their ability to move across these grasslands was affected by these other kind of hairless apes that were now roaming across the environment. Who knows? Who knows? And so ends Giganto. Not to be discovered for another 200,000 years, when people were grinding it up into bones to stop their bum falling out, thanks to a porcupine stashing them in a cave. The twists and turns of science, guys. The twists and turns of evolution and science. Shout out to our giant ape, though. Shout out.